Hi, it's Wednesday, May 20th, 2026, and this is Washington in Focus. I'm Carlene Johnson. In today's episode, another member of the left leaning Seattle City Council is speaking out about his concerns with recent comments from Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson. You may recall she's been waving goodbye to business and wealthy residents, kind of dismissing concerns about the newly passed income tax and what impact that will have on business and wealth exodus from the city and the state. So, this is the second Democratic member of the council to speak out. My colleague Randy Diamond has this exclusive interview for you coming up in today's episode. And then former Seattle Police Guild Union President Mike Solon is now a candidate for Pierce County Council District 7. He's still a Seattle police officer, but he's lived in Pierce County for the last several years. But within a couple of days of filing his candidacy for that District 7 position, the Pierce County auditor came out and said, "You can't run for office." Well, we're going to have that exchange, how that played out, because Monday he won a lawsuit. So he's going to be on the primary ballot in August and hopes to earn that District 7 position, which is now held by a Democrat. I did also have a conversation not only with him today, but with the Pierce County Auditor's Office. So you'll have that exclusive content in today's episode. And then finally, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project over the Columbia River connecting Oregon and Washington. We've been reporting on this in recent weeks. The timeline's been pushed way out. The price tag has gone way up, and tolls are now going to be implemented on the old bridge way before the new bridge is complete. There was an update that was provided to the Washington State Transportation Commission on Tuesday. We'll share that with you in today's episode of Washington in Focus. So let's dive in. Seattle City Councilman Rob Saka told my colleague, Seattle reporter Randy Diamond, Tuesday he is concerned. He's concerned about the recent comments from Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson, even though he is also a Democrat, perhaps not as left-leaning as the socialist mayor is. Very concerned about the comments she made, kind of dismissing the business and wealthy exodus, whether people have already left or said they're making plans to leave. So he is the second Democrat to be speaking out about this in the last few weeks. And he says, I really don't agree with Mayor Katie Wilson's approach to this issue, especially he was speaking to Starbucks. Headquarters are in his district in the Soto part of Seattle. So I want to share part of his interview with my colleague Randy Diamond. And he says not only is he concerned about, Starbucks leaving, and we had another report on that this week with them laying off another 250 plus corporate employees. But he's concerned that other high income earners are going to continue to leave Seattle and the state of Washington if they don't stop villainizing these folks.
I personally disagree with, the approach that I think we all saw clips of, but I am personally concerned that Starbucks is leaving, and what that means for our city's economic vitality, jobs, potential job growth or lack thereof, and again, what it means not only just for our city but for our region.
Now, Councilman Saka did not want to go after Mayor Wilson. My colleague Randy Diamond pressed him a couple times in the interview to say, what do you think of her comments? And he was very careful to say, I don't want to attack her personally. She can speak for herself. But he said he has met with officials in the mayor's office. I don't know if that was the mayor herself or just her staff members to express his concerns. But he said he does believe the better approach at this point would be working with the business community and folks that have been raising some of these concerns about the mounting tax and regulation burdens that are driving people out.
I think we should work hard to not dismiss or trivialize the concerns of others, especially during a period of economic uncertainty and rapid change that we're experiencing now. So, yeah, I think we're really at our best as a city when we bring people together, when we work to solve hard problems collaboratively and build a city where businesses, workers, families, and communities can all thrive and all have a say in the conversation. So that's the better together story that I've long been telling and will continue to be a firm believer in. I do find it gravely concerning when any major employer picks up its crayons and uh, heads to another play box and takes jobs with it. I happen to represent District 1 in the city of Seattle, which includes SoDo, where Starbucks headquarters is. But there's actually a lot of cross-pollination between SoDo and another major part of my district, West Seattle. So SoDo is a industrial lands, maritime industrial lands. A lot of small, medium-sized businesses or operate there, including Starbucks. And a lot of their workers live in West Seattle. So there's a natural cross-pollination between SoDo and other parts of my district. So in any event, yeah, I do find it concerning and I'm concerned about jobs in our city and growth.
It was just a couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity to also interview Seattle City Councilman Bob Kettle, also a Democrat, but he shared very similar concerns publicly with me, saying, um, you know, uh, kind of breaking ranks really with the mayor. They don't want to throw her under the bus per se, but they're very concerned about some of the comments that she has made and her waving goodbye to those who would, flee the city or flee the state to escape the tax burden and the pending income tax if it's upheld in the courts and voters don't repeal it with the initiative that may qualify for the ballot this year. So interesting to have two Democrats within the last couple of weeks on the Seattle City Council speaking out in opposition to what the mayor has been saying. And now to a major court win this week for a candidate for Pierce County Council. This is former Seattle Police Guild President Mike Solon. He won a pretty significant challenge on Monday so that his candidacy for District 7, the position on the council, can move forward. This covers Gig Harbor and parts of unincorporated Pierce County, out of the Key Peninsula, if you know that area at all. That's the district that that he would represent. The incumbent there, who is Democrat Robin Denson, she is not seeking reelection after just one term. Now, the Pierce County Auditor moved within just a couple of days of Mike Solon filing for candidacy during filing week, which was that May 4th to the 7th, so earlier this month. He filed and then a few days later found out that the Pierce County Auditor was challenging that, basically framing the fact that, yeah, you may have lived here for 4+ years in the district you seek to represent, but you have not been a registered voter during that time. And so that was the challenge. But a judge ultimately sided with Mike Solon, basically saying the charter language was rewritten in the process and Solon's name will stay on the ballot. Here's part of my conversation with Mike Solon earlier today.
So I filed for candidacy on May 4th, and I was then notified 3 days later in the afternoon, just hours before the final day was to start, where you couldn't file anymore. And they told me, the auditor's office told me, the manager there said that, hey, we've rejected your candidacy, you're filing, based upon what their perception was violating charter language. I was kind of curious as to that, and I asked them, well, how did you become aware of this, using your words, not being qualified to even file for candidacy? They said, well, we're going to cite section 4.30 of the charter language, which says you must establish 1 year residency and voter registration. And I said, just out of curiosity, I can establish 1 year residency. I've been here for almost 5 years, and I have no problem providing a court affidavit which says so. But has anybody ever been challenged with the voter registration component of that? And he didn't really have an answer for me. And I was like, okay. In my mind, I'm like, something's going on here, because I have a hard time believing that I was just randomly reviewed on that component of what seems to be innocuous and nuanced as well at the same time on voter registration. So to me, when I asked them, did anybody give you a heads up on this in terms of my voter registration timeline? And then that influenced your decision. And of course, they couldn't answer that either. So for me, I was pretty sure that there were some shenanigans afoot. And the gamesmanship, the politics was already starting. And mainly because I think that they're scared I have a chance of winning. And well, it turns out that they thought I was going to roll over. And that's not me. And I hadn't even really launched my campaign, but I already just started really advocating for the constituency in Pierce County. So I filed a lawsuit and I won.
I did reach out directly to Pierce County Auditor Linda Farmer requesting an interview about the attempt to keep Solon off the ballot. And we were told she was busy today. She was attending some meetings and could not accommodate an interview on short notice. But we were then offered an interview with Katie Blinn. And Katie is the Assistant Chief Deputy Attorney who provides legal counsel to the Pierce County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And she explained to me that yes, they ultimately lost this challenge, but she said that initially the judge agreed that Pierce County's charter, the way it is written for candidates, does in fact state that you have to be a registered voter tied to your physical address for at least a year before you can file to be a candidate to represent that district. But ultimately, the judge said, really, that's just too high a bar.
The charter can establish county elected office and then also establish the qualifications for those offices and requirements to file for office. The judge agreed with the county on that the charter allows the county to set qualifications for county office. But then the second legal argument was, is this particular requirement of having a year of voter registration in addition to a year of residency just too high a bar, essentially? Does it violate equal protection? The theory being filing for office is a fundamental right, and that requires a compelling state interest in order to impinge on that right. And the court concluded that the year of residency already satisfies any interests, a compelling interest that the government has in making sure that candidates are familiar with their communities in order to file for office, and requiring the year of voter registration, essentially. There's just not a need for that over and above the year of residency. But it's also possible that there could be an appeal on this matter later. There was the state Supreme Court did take up a similar argument even after a candidate had won a general election, because there were questions outstanding on her eligibility to serve. So after she won the general election, the state Supreme Court still did accept review on the legal matter, because there was still essentially a legal challenge that challengers wanted to pursue.
We also reached out to Democratic candidate Brenda Likens, who is potentially going to be the one to face off, likely to be advancing after the August primary to face off against Mike Solon, assuming he advances beyond the primary. We did not hear back from her campaign today. She's a former Gig Harbor City Council member who now serves on the Pierce County Charter Review Commission. And Chuck West is also a Peninsula School Board member who is retired Key Peninsula Fire Department member, battalion chief, actually. He's running as an independent for the office as well. So it'll be after the August primary. We find out who moves on and where all of this goes. But that's an update on that very interesting race when we promise to keep on top of for you. And now to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. If you're not familiar and you don't live in Southwest Washington or travel across the bridge to Oregon very often, recent estimates for the project over the Columbia River, this is the bridge that connects Washington to Oregon, have dramatically increased. And the timeline has been pushed way out. And they also recently said tolls are going to have to start way before we ever have a new bridge to drive across. So while we're still in waiting for the federal government to kind of sign off on some of the record of decision stuff that has to happen before we get matching federal funds, the states of Washington and Oregon are moving ahead with this project. Now, last month, leaders gave this update on the mega project. Yesterday, there was an opportunity for folks to kind of get an update for the Washington Transportation Commission. But I want to show this to you first. You might have missed this, but I interviewed Representative John Lee, who is Republican from Vancouver. He's been very vocal in criticizing this project from the beginning. And recently, more recent design plans and current design plans have light rail across the bridge. He says it's completely unnecessary, not justified on ridership numbers, and is a large part of the reason that we have a ballooning price tag for this. So he's been very critical of putting trains across this bridge. He says it's completely unnecessary. So here's part of my conversation with Representative John Lee.
So this is a light rail project in search of a bridge. As we have discussed before, Portland's TriMet is going bankrupt. They need a bailout, and if they can get billions of federal money, it helps them delay the inevitable. Last night at C-Tran, they also got a briefing on ridership. C-Tran, Clark Transportation Bus Company, is the only transit over the Columbia River into Portland, and they told the board 2,200 people a day. In reality, that's 2,200 boardings, and that is the two bridges, I-5 and I-205. On the I-5 corridor, it's about 1,500 boardings, which means they're taking about 750 people out of their cars, because a person will board twice a day, once in the morning going to work and once in the evening coming back. So with 750 people a day, my gosh, anybody with common sense says you support that with 3 or 4 buses. In the morning, 3 or 4 buses. In the evening, you got it. And if you need a double articulated bus, like Sound Transit has for some of their express service in Seattle, hey, great. You put the articulated double buses that hold 100 people a pop, and you run those.
So on Tuesday, Carly Francis, who is the interim program manager for the IBR project, gave that update to the Washington Transportation Commission. The theme to me seemed to be her saying, nothing unusual here to have a mega project of this size pushed way out and done in phases, because that's what the new plan is. We're going to have, this chunk done, this chunk done, this chunk done, but we're going to be tolling at the outset to make sure we can pay for all these subsequent phases of the project to be complete.
Folks may have heard that we've recently, back in March, we issued a new cost estimate, and related to the fact that we see cost estimates going up significantly in many places. It's important to note that mega programs are regularly phased to deliver them. It's not unique to IBR. You folks are very familiar with 520 and other programs in Washington. There are examples in Oregon and across the country that does allow us to align funding and workforce and manage those construction impacts. As we issued the new cost estimate, we also were making sure folks were understanding that the state agencies are committed to working on that 5-mile project over time. There is a significant volume of work here, really is critical to start at the river and build out from there. This is an example of some previous packaging of that work that was anticipated. We have been making tweaks to that. But again, we are committed to working that 5 miles, and this 5 miles is the subject of the environmental impact statement process that we are looking to conclude soon. The cost estimate update that was issued in March did increase costs. We were previously out of a 2022 estimate at a cost estimate of $5 billion to $7.5 billion, with a likely cost of $6 billion. That was at a 60% probability. This is the traditional CETA process that you folks are familiar with. That 60% is the typical planning figure that WashDOT was using at the time. The updated cost estimate does increase the cost from 13.5 to 15.2 billion, with a likely cost of 14.4.
Now, toll rates are not yet finalized. The numbers I've seen vary on a one-way trip across the bridge, anywhere from like $1.55 up to $4.50 per trip, depending upon time of day and traffic volumes. If you live here in Washington, you well know that toll rates can vary dramatically based on time of day. I think there's stretches of 167 in the hot lanes where it's like $15 to get into those lanes at busy times of day. So I have a feeling these numbers may be changing as we get closer to actually the implementation of tolls. So that is it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. Check out our Center Square Washington page for these stories and more. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow.